4. The hidden villages. Before shinobi even existed, there was one man who shaped the world. Hagoromo Ōtsutsuki, the sage of 6 paths. But even in death, his dream of peace was never fulfilled. The cycle of hatred continued, twisting through generations. So the sage made a final choice. If my sons cannot bring balance, then I shall return as one who will. Centuries later, a boy was born. Loud, stubborn, and full of heart. His name, Naruto Uzumaki. Unaware that within him slept the spirit of the very being who once created chakra itself. This is the story of a new legend. A world where Naruto becomes the true reincarnation of the Sage of 6 Paths. Hello guys, this is the first part of What If Naruto was the reincarnation of Sage of 6 Paths. Welcome to Sage Whatifs. By the age of 3, Naruto Uzumaki was no ordinary child. The chaos of his birth, the Nine Tails attack, the sacrifices of his parents, had left him in the cold arms of an orphanage. But unlike other children, Naruto did not merely survive. He observed, learned, and adapted. His bright blue eyes held more than innocence. They held awareness, calculation, and a spark of the ancient power that resided within him. The orphanage was a dull, gray building where love was in short supply, replaced instead by routine and discipline. Children were fed, clothed, and trained, but seldom cared for. Naruto quickly understood the rules. Cry loud, fight smart, and manipulate the world around you to survive. By 3, he could crawl and walk with surprising coordination, his movements almost unnervingly precise for a toddler. When other children tried to push him, he would shift subtly, avoiding harm before the bully even realized he had moved. Sometimes a falling object would stop mid-air, a vase prevented from breaking by a subtle shift of chakra he did not yet consciously control. He had no teacher, no guide, save for the whispering presence of Hagoromo in his mind. The sage never forced him but taught him indirectly, through observation and intuition. Notice patterns. Learn to anticipate. The world is cruel. But if you understand it, you can bend it. Not yet fully, but someday. Naruto's genius was subtle at first. He learned languages quickly by listening to the caretakers. He memorized schedules, predicting when a meal would come or when punishments would occur. He could sense the moods of other children, knowing when to retreat, when to strike back, and when to play along. Even at this age, he experimented with his innate power. A small candle flickering toward his crib. He reached out, and the flame curved away from him as though guided by unseen hands. A book tipped off the shelf. It landed open and intact. Naruto did not understand the full extent of his abilities, but the latent energy of Hagoromo allowed him to act with uncanny precision. Other children began to notice him, though not in admiration. There was a strange aura about Naruto. Subtle, almost invisible, but enough to make them uneasy. Some whispered he was lucky, some said he was cursed. Naruto did not care. He observed quietly, storing every detail for later use. Life in the orphanage was far from kind. By 3, Naruto already understood that the adults tolerated him only because they had no choice, and the children avoided him because they sensed he was different. Meals were often scarce, punishments frequent, and affection almost non-existent. But Naruto had the mind of a genius in the presence of Hagoromo. He learned to conserve energy, to avoid unnecessary attention, and to turn small incidents to his advantage. If a bully approached, he might drop a toy in the right place, causing the bully to stumble, or accidentally knock over a block, diverting anger away from himself. Every action was calculated, even unconsciously. At night, when the other children slept, he often lay awake, listening to the rain pattering on the roof. In these quiet moments, the whispers of Hagoromo came strongest. Observation is your teacher. Endurance is your weapon. Intelligence is your shield. Power is your birthright, but it will only awaken if you survive. Naruto often imagined the sage standing over him, glowing softly in golden light. Though he could not yet move mountains or call down lightning, he felt the potential within himself. A flicker that responded instinctively to danger, curiosity, and determination. By age 3, Naruto had begun small experiments. He would crawl to objects deliberately, testing whether they responded to him. He noticed patterns in his own power. Anger made it flare uncontrollably, fear caused it to hide, curiosity allowed it to move subtly. One morning, a toy block tower teetered dangerously as he reached for another toy. The tower fell, and stopped mid-air, adjusting gently as if guided by unseen hands. Naruto clapped quietly, a small grin on his face. "I did it," he whispered to himself, unaware that the glow in his small hands reflected the sage's energy subtly manifesting. Other children watched him with wide eyes, unsure what to make of this tiny, strange boy. Naruto noticed their fear and confusion and filed it away. Useful, he thought. People always reveal themselves if you watch closely. Even as a toddler, Naruto's life was harsh. The orphanage had no room for weakness. Any display of vulnerability was met with neglect or punishment. By observing, calculating, and subtly manipulating his environment, Naruto survived. Hagoromo's presence guided him indirectly. When a heavy tray fell toward him, he instinctively shifted his tiny body, and the tray slowed, tipping harmlessly. When other children tried to strike him, a gust of wind, or perhaps an unseen force, knocked them slightly off balance. The power was not fully conscious, but it was enough. Every survival, every small victory, reinforced his understanding. The world would not give him mercy. He had to earn his place through cunning, intelligence, and instinctive power. By 4, Naruto had learned a painful truth. He was alone. No one would protect him, no one would care for him as his parents had. The world feared what it could not understand, and Naruto was different. A child of destiny, carrying the reincarnation of Hagoromo within him. Yet, he did not despair. The sage whispered constantly, a voice that balanced the cruelty of reality with the promise of power. Loneliness is a tool. Hardship is a teacher. Observe, endure, and awaken. Your path will be difficult, but it will lead to greatness. Naruto clutched a small, worn toy, his only comfort, and stared at the ceiling. He was small, alone, and underestimated. But inside, a fire burned, a genius mind sharpened by survival, a sage's chakra stirring in infancy, and a determination that no orphanage, no bully, no hardship could extinguish. By the time he turned 5, the caretakers began to whisper among themselves. He was cleverer than any child they had ever seen. Too clever. Too different. And when small incidents continued, toys floating slightly, minor accidents averting him, subtle manipulations of his environment, fear began to take root. Naruto didn't understand the fear fully, but he understood the lesson. To survive, he must learn, endure, and grow stronger. The sage's whispers promised that every hardship was shaping him for a destiny far beyond the walls or the orphanage. Naruto Uzumaki had spent his earliest years in the orphanage, observing, learning, surviving. But at 5, even the orphanage had rejected him. Thrown out onto the streets of Konoha, the child faced the harshest lesson of all. The world would give him nothing. The rain fell steadily, soaking the tiny frame of the boy as he wandered the empty streets. His small, bare feet splashed through puddles. His torn clothing offered little protection. Yet even in this moment of despair, Naruto did not cry. He could not. Crying achieved nothing. Survival required observation, quick thinking, and adaptability. Skills he had already honed in the orphanage. The whispers of Hagoromo inside him stirred, subtle but insistent. Endure. Observe. Learn. The world is cruel, but it can be understood, and it can be bent. Even now, your path begins. Naruto shivered, not from the cold, but from the weight of a truth he could not yet fully grasp. He was utterly alone. There was no home, no caretaker, no comfort. Only the streets and the faint golden pulse of energy within him, a presence ancient and guiding. Food was scarce. By instinct, Naruto learned quickly to scavenge. He watched the villagers, memorizing their routines. When meals were prepared, when merchants left baskets unattended, when garbage was discarded. His blue eyes were sharp and calculating, already seeing patterns others overlooked. At first, the villagers avoided him, wary of the scrappy, blonde-haired child wandering alone. Some muttered curses under their breath. Some pitied him, but pitiful hands offered little to change the child's reality. Naruto learned that help was rare and unreliable. He would have to depend on himself. And on the faint, guiding pulse of Hagoromo's power within. Even simple tasks became experiments in control. A loaf of bread teetering on a stall's edge might slip toward him. But subtly, almost imperceptibly, it would tilt in a way that allowed him to catch it. He did not understand how he did it consciously. He only knew that he survived, and that his instincts, guided by the sage's presence, protected him. Rain-slicked streets of Konoha glistened under the dim evening light as a small, scrappy figure darted between alleyways. Naruto Uzumaki, barely 6, hunched under his tattered clothes, clutching a soaked piece of bread. The streets had been cruel, teaching him lessons of survival, loneliness, and caution. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage, moved quietly along the main road, inspecting the village. His sharp eyes caught the boy, crouched in the shadow of a building, seemingly shielding himself from more than just the rain. There was something different about him. A presence, faint and powerful, radiating from the child like a whisper of something ancient. H.N. Hiruzen murmured, kneeling down to the boy's level. You've been alone for far too long, haven't you? Naruto's blue eyes flickered up, wary yet curious. The golden pulse of energy within him stirred subtly, instinctively sensing the old man's calm authority. Hiruzen offered a small smile. I think it is time you had a proper home. There's a small apartment near the village edge. You can stay there, safe, for as long as you need. The key felt heavy in Naruto's small hand. It was strange, almost unreal, to be trusted with something so simple yet so significant. Hiruzen had handed it to him with a gentle smile, leaving the boy in front of a modest apartment near the edge of the village. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that reflected the dim glow of lanterns along the street. Naruto pushed the door open, and the scent of dust and wooden floors greeted him. The apartment was small. One main room, a tiny kitchenette, and a space for a futon. It was humble, but it was his. For the first time, he did not have to hide, fight, or survive in constant fear. He stepped inside cautiously, blue eyes scanning every corner. A faint golden shimmer rippled across his small hands. The energy of Hagoromo, subtle but ever present, responded to the calm and safety around him. Objects seemed to settle gently as if acknowledging his presence. The futon folded neatly on its own. A small bowl in the kitchen tilted toward him, almost imperceptibly. Naruto sat down on the floor, hugging his knees. Is this really mine? He whispered, barely believing it. The apartment was quiet, safe, and empty. And for the first time, the streets, the bullies, and the orphanage felt distant, like another life. Hagoromo's voice whispered softly in his mind. Observe. Learn. Grow. Even in solitude, your power and mind will flourish. This is your sanctuary. A place to shape your destiny. Naruto let out a small, uncertain smile. He did not have parents to guide him, but he had something else. Freedom, safety, and the awakening of a power older than the village itself. The boy who had been abandoned, bullied, and forced to survive on the streets now had a place to call his own. A place to grow, learn, and one day, change the world. The small apartment near the edge of Konoha was Naruto Uzumaki's home, but the forest beyond it was his true training ground. After being abandoned by the orphanage, the streets had taught him survival, cunning, and instinct. But it was the forest. Wide, untamed, and full of challenges. That forged his body into something extraordinary. At 5, Naruto's mornings began with sprinting through uneven terrain. He ran barefoot over dirt, roots, and stones, learning to balance, dodge, and react instinctively to sudden obstacles. Fallen logs became hurdles. Streams became natural agility courses. Even the slope of a hill was a test of endurance. By pushing his body in this way, he trained muscles, joints, and reflexes that other children wouldn't touch until their teens. After running, he practiced strength and endurance. He climbed trees, jumped across gaps between trunks, and lifted heavy branches, conditioning both upper and lower body. Push-ups, sit-ups, and crawling through brush became part of his daily routine, blending traditional exercise with survival skills. Even the rough bark of trees and uneven forest floors hardened his hands and feet, training him for real-world combat conditions. By 6, Naruto had added reflex training. He dodged falling branches, evaded sudden movements of animals, and timed leaps over rocks and roots. Every misstep was analyzed, every success reinforced. The forest taught him precision, timing, and the natural instinct to anticipate danger. Skills far beyond any child his age. By 7, he incorporated combat simulations. Using sticks and stones, he practiced strikes, blocks, and evasive maneuvers. Fallen logs became practice dummies. Shadow patterns under the sun helped him gauge distance and speed. Even subtle manipulations of wind and leaves, instinctively guided by Hagoromo's energy, improved his awareness and reaction time. Hagoromo's presence whispered guidance. Endure. Adapt. Strengthen. Every challenge is a teacher. Every obstacle prepares you for battles to come. Naruto felt it but did not fully understand it yet. Every day, he trained with intensity and focus, honing both body and mind. By 8, Naruto's physical capabilities were remarkable. His muscles, though lean, were toned with strength. His legs were powerful from running and leaping. His arms were trained from climbing, lifting, and swinging through trees. Reflexes were sharp. Coordination was precise. Even stamina, honed from hours of continuous running and obstacle navigation, surpassed that of many older children. He would end each day with a mental cool down. Sitting quietly, focusing on breathing, and sensing the subtle pulse of energy within him. Hagoromo's chakra responded instinctively, guiding posture, focus, and energy flow. Though the power was not yet fully understood or consciously controlled, it complemented his physical training, making him faster, sharper, and more aware than any ordinary child. Finally, standing at the edge of the forest at sunset, Naruto looked toward the village. The academy awaited. A place of new rules, classmates, and challenges. But he was ready. Every sprint, climb, leap, and strike had prepared him. Every bruise, every fall, every test of endurance had built him into a prodigy. I will endure. I will grow. I will be stronger than anyone expects, he whispered, a small smile forming on his lips. The golden pulse of Hagoromo's chakra stirred quietly in his chest, a silent promise that his strength would only grow. Naruto Uzumaki, once abandoned, once alone on the streets, had forged himself in the wilds. His body, mind, and instincts were honed to a level few could match. The forest had been his master, his arena, and his teacher. Now, he was ready to step into the academy and the wider world, with the skills, strength, and instincts of a true ninja prodigy. The first day of the Ninja Academy was nothing like Naruto Uzumaki had imagined. He had spent years training in the forests and open grounds outside Konoha, honing his body and instincts under the watchful, subtle guidance of Hagoromo's chakra. Now, entering a classroom filled with noisy, chaotic children, Naruto observed everything. Every movement, every glance, every sound was catalogued in his sharp mind. The instructor began with the basics. Chakra control exercises. Most students struggled to even step on the water surface without sinking. Naruto's golden pulse of energy stirred lightly, instinctively guiding him. His first step on the water was perfect. With every movement, he felt the flow of his chakra align seamlessly with his body. The other children gasped, and even the instructor's eyes widened. Impressive, he muttered, scribbling notes. Physical conditioning followed. Sprints, push-ups, sit-ups, and climbing exercises were designed for stamina and agility. But for Naruto, they were second nature. His years of forest training had made his muscles lean and strong, his reflexes sharp, and his coordination precise. Obstacle courses, which were difficult for his classmates, felt like a warm-up. He climbed, jumped, and balanced with a grace that drew whispers from the class. When basic jutsus were introduced, transformation techniques, clones, and minor movement enhancements, Naruto excelled immediately. A small shadow clone appeared with perfect balance, maintaining its stance while he experimented with multiple clones in quick succession. Other students watched in awe, some whispering about the genius blonde-haired boy who seemed to bend chakra effortlessly. Beyond class, Naruto spent hours in the forest and on the village outskirts. His exercises were not just repeats of what was taught in the academy. They were advanced routines that combined agility, stamina, reflexes, and subtle chakra control. Logs became climbing challenges, streams tested balance, and scattered stones were used as training targets for precision. Even the wind and falling leaves were manipulated slightly, guided by his latent Hagoromo energy. By the end of his first year, Naruto had mastered the basic curriculum. His speed, reflexes, stamina, and chakra control far exceeded his peers. Teachers began taking notice, murmuring about a prodigy whose talents seemed beyond his age. Yet, Naruto remained focused, quietly training himself to go beyond what the academy expected. The second year introduced more challenging exercises, emphasizing multitasking, speed, and stamina. Naruto thrived in these conditions. When tasked with balancing while maintaining a clone, he executed multiple clones, each performing a different action. A feat no other student could achieve. Physical drills intensified. Obstacle courses became longer, steeper, and more complex. Students sprinted over uneven ground, climbed weighted ropes, and dodged swinging wooden logs. Naruto had already incorporated such exercises in his forest training, so he moved with uncanny precision. Each leap, each roll, and each landing was calculated to optimize speed and efficiency. Sparring sessions were a revelation. Classmates tried to attack him with simple strikes, only to find themselves dodged effortlessly. Naruto analyzed each movement, predicting angles and timing his counters. Even a casual push or feint from another student became a lesson in anticipation and reaction. Hagoromo's energy subtly guided him, enhancing reflexes without revealing itself overtly. Naruto also began teaching himself strategy. Observing his peers, he noticed patterns in attacks and weaknesses in stance. By combining physical agility with mental calculation, he started developing a unique approach to combat. Anticipating before others moved, reacting faster than they could imagine, and using environmental elements like fallen logs or branches as improvised tools. Even outside the academy, his forest routines became more advanced. He practiced sprinting across uneven ground for long distances, leaping across streams, climbing trees with speed, and combining movement with small chakra manipulations. Rocks, leaves, and sticks were subtly manipulated to create distractions or practice precision strikes. His body was growing stronger, faster, and more durable than any child in the academy, while his mind developed sharper analytical skills. By the end of year 2, Naruto had not only mastered the curriculum but surpassed it by a significant margin. Other students admired him, feared him, or envied his unmatched abilities. Teachers recognized his genius but could only assign tasks that challenged him incrementally, knowing his true potential far exceeded standard lessons. Year 3 brought advanced control exercises and multi-layered simulations. Naruto's clone techniques had improved to a level previously unseen in the academy. He could maintain multiple clones performing different movements, all synchronized perfectly with his own, practicing agility, reflexes, and combat anticipation simultaneously. Physical challenges now included weighted obstacle courses, timed endurance runs, climbing taller trees, and reaction drills against multiple attackers. Naruto treated each challenge as an experiment. His forest training allowed him to anticipate movements, react instinctively, and exploit terrain to his advantage. Falling branches, loose stones, or sudden gusts of wind became part of his training, teaching him adaptability. He also began testing subtle applications of Hagoromo's energy. Though not fully conscious, he noticed he could anticipate danger slightly faster, coordinate movement more efficiently, and sense small changes in his environment. During group exercises, he led peers naturally, offering advice and demonstrating techniques. Leadership born of skill and confidence rather than arrogance. Strategic thinking became a focus. Naruto analyzed sparring patterns, predicted opponents' movements, and adjusted tactics in real time. Even minor failures were studied and corrected with meticulous precision. Classmates started to follow him in mock exercises, recognizing his ability to solve problems and improve efficiency. Forest training became more complex. Naruto created improvised combat scenarios. Tracking targets across the trees, dodging ambushes, and combining agility with chakra control for precision strikes. He tested stamina with long-distance sprints, balance on thin logs, and endurance against simulated attacks. His body and mind had become finely tuned instruments of speed, reflex, and analytical prowess. By the end of Year 3, Naruto was no longer just a prodigy. He was a benchmark. Teachers used him as a standard for evaluating others, and his peers both respected and envied his capabilities. Yet Naruto remained focused on his personal growth, quietly pushing himself further with every training session. The final year of the academy solidified everything Naruto had learned. Physical drills pushed endurance, speed, and reflexes to their limits. Obstacle courses combined climbing, sprinting, dodging, and evasion. His multi-clone techniques were perfected, and he could maintain several clones performing different tasks simultaneously for extended periods. In class, students struggled with basic exercises, but Naruto performed flawlessly. His movements were fluid, precise, and instinctively calculated. The subtle pulse of Hagoromo's chakra enhanced his reflexes and coordination, making him appear almost untouchable during sparring. Naruto also began experimenting with creative applications of chakra. Subtly manipulating leaves or small stones to test reaction times, using clones to simulate attacks, or integrating movement with energy control. Teachers noticed his originality and problem-solving skills, realizing he had gone beyond the academy's designed curriculum. Rivalries peaked. Some students envied his abilities, while others sought his guidance. Naruto maintained humility, focusing on improvement rather than recognition. His forest training remained an essential supplement, pushing his body and mind beyond what the academy could offer. He tested endurance, agility, and reaction with increasingly complex exercises, simulating battlefield conditions. By the end of the 4th year, Naruto had mastered all academy challenges, surpassed his peers in every measurable way, and subtly awakened more of Hagoromo's influence in instinct, reflex, and awareness. Graduation day arrived, and teachers praised his unparalleled skill, discipline, and intelligence. Naruto Uzumaki, once abandoned and alone, had grown into a prodigy whose physical and mental abilities foreshadowed a future that would challenge even the strongest ninjas of Konoha. Stepping out of the academy gates, Naruto looked toward the village and beyond. The forests, open grounds, and disciplined years of training had forged him into a formidable young ninja. The next stage awaited. Missions, real combat, and challenges that would test his genius and the awakening power of the sage within. "This is just the beginning," he whispered, the faint golden pulse of Hagoromo chakra stirring in his chest. "I will surpass everything. And no one will stand in my way." The classroom buzzed with nervous energy. Dozens of academy students shuffled in their seats, whispering, tapping their pencils, and fidgeting with headbands that would soon be theirs if they passed. Naruto sat near the window, sunlight spilling across his face. 4 years had passed since the lonely boy, thrown out of the orphanage, had started his journey. 4 years of training in the forest, pushing his body until his limbs ached, learning the rhythm of his own heartbeat and the quiet hum of chakra beneath his skin. Now, at 12 years old, his body was lean and defined from training. His eyes, once wide and curious, had a calm, sharp focus that surprised even Iruka-sensei when he looked his way. "All right, everyone," Iruka said, stepping up to the front. "This is it. Today's your genin exams. You'll be tested on written knowledge, chakra control, and combat ability. No holding back." Some students cheered nervously. Others went pale. Naruto leaned back in his chair, arms folded behind his head. "I've trained for this since I was 5. Time to see how far I've come." The exam sheets were handed out. Questions about chakra nature, battle strategy, mission protocol. Things most students crammed for last night. Naruto's pencil moved quietly, swiftly. His handwriting wasn't perfect, but his answers were. When the question asked how to react if an ambush separated your squad, he thought back to his forest training. The traps he set, the ambushes he escaped. Keep moving. Stay unpredictable. Draw the enemy into familiar terrain. Iruka glanced up mid-checking another student and noticed Naruto's focus. He wasn't nervous, wasn't fidgeting. He was completely centered. 30 minutes later, Naruto put down his pencil, done long before most others. He leaned back again, eyes drifting to the window, watching leaves swirl in the morning wind. Feels like the forest is cheering for me, he thought with a small smirk. Next test. Physical evaluation. Mizuki called. A line of students stood at the forest edge, looking toward the obstacle course. Logs, ropes, and suspended planks stretched over a stream. Naruto rolled his shoulders, feeling his muscles warm. His senses sharpened. A faint hum of power thrummed beneath his skin, not loud or flashy, but deep and ancient. The whistle blew. Naruto burst forward. His speed wasn't wild or reckless. It was precise. Each footstep landed cleanly, no wasted movement. He leapt over a log, ducked under a swinging rope, and rolled smoothly under a beam before sprinting again. The other students struggled to keep up, panting and tripping over branches. Naruto's breathing stayed even. He felt the course before he saw it. Like the ground whispered to him where to step next. He landed at the finish line, hardly winded, as Iruka clicked his stopwatch. 21 seconds, he said, blinking in surprise. That's the fastest time in 10 years. Naruto smiled faintly, rubbing the back of his head. Hey, guess the forest training paid off. The crowd of students formed a loose circle as sparring matches began. Naruto Uzumaki vs Sasuke Mizuki called. To pass the match you will have to stay in the circle for 3 minutes. Whoever will go out of the circle will lose the match, Iruka said. Girls were cheering for Sasuke Uchiha. The match started and Naruto started the fight with the burst of speed attacking in Sasuke Uchiha so fast. Sasuke was defending only in that situation. Naruto didn't push so much that Sasuke go out of the circle. In 3 minutes Naruto hit him so many times, but he was in those 3 minutes Sasuke wasn't even able to hit Naruto even once. After 3 minutes Naruto was there without getting only one hit. Students were shocked to see that happening. They used to think that Sasuke was so strong, but when he was not even able to touch Naruto. They were shocked to see that. The class was silent for a moment. Even Iruka and Mizuki exchanged looks. Back in the classroom, the final test awaited. Each student had to perform the clone jutsu. A simple, basic technique. But one that had humbled many. Iruka called names one by one. Most produced 2 or 3 unstable clones. Some managed only 1. When Naruto's turn came, whispers spread. Even though he'd been top in every test, clone jutsu was known to be his weakest. Iruka folded his arms. All right, Naruto. Show us what you've got. Naruto closed his eyes. He exhaled slowly, steadying his chakra. He'd trained for this thousands of times. Focusing on balance, flow, and intention rather than sheer power. His hands came together in a single seal. Clone jutsu. A faint golden shimmer passed through the room. Subtle, almost imperceptible. Then, 3 perfect clones appeared beside him. Each one solid, breathing lightly, eyes sharp and alive. The room went silent. Iruka blinked, then smiled. Perfect. Not even a flicker of instability. Naruto Uzumaki. You pass. Naruto let out a quiet sigh of relief, the faint warmth of chakra fading. Guess that one paid off, old man, he thought, imagining Hagoromo's calm voice echoing somewhere deep within. After the exams. When it was over, Iruka gathered the students in the courtyard. The setting sun painted the sky orange and gold, the village rooftops glowing softly. Iruka's voice rang out. Congratulations, everyone who passed. From today, you are genin of the Hidden Leaf Village. Naruto stood off to the side, looking at the forehead protector Iruka handed him. He tied it around his head slowly. For a moment, his reflection in the classroom window caught the light. And behind him, just for an instant, a silhouette shimmered. A man with horns and calm, ancient eyes. Then it was gone. Naruto smiled faintly, looking toward the sunset. I made it this far. But this is just the beginning. The wind rustled the leaves around him, carrying a faint whisper that no one else could hear. Walk your path, my child. The world awaits you. Naruto's hand tightened on his new forehead protector. Yeah, I will. The sun had barely risen over Konoha when Naruto Uzumaki made his way to the academy courtyard. The day of team assignments had finally arrived. The genin exams were complete, and the results had already been posted. Naruto had passed, of course, but this was the moment that truly determined his next steps. Who he would be teamed with and under which sensei he would train. A small crowd had gathered near the notice board. Naruto pushed through, his bright orange jacket standing out like a beacon. His eyes scanned the parchment carefully. Team 7. Naruto Uzumaki. Sasuke Uchiha. Sakura Haruno. Kakashi Hatake Sensei. Naruto tilted his head, reading the names again. A grin spread across his face. Interesting. He had expected a strong team, but this combination promised both challenge and opportunity. Sasuke Uchiha arrived first. His black hair fell neatly over his forehead, and his dark eyes held a calm, calculating intensity. Sakura Haruno came next, her pink hair bouncing slightly as she adjusted her bag. Finally, the sensei of the team arrived. Kakashi Hatake. Leaning lazily against a tree, his mask covering the lower half of his face, he gave a single lazy nod. One eye, visible above the mask, flicked over the students in an assessing gaze. There was a quiet, almost imperceptible aura of skill around him. Naruto felt it immediately. The same instinctive awareness he had been honing for years in the forest, now subtly amplified by the latent power of Hagoromo's reincarnation. Welcome, Team 7, Kakashi said, his voice calm but edged with authority. I'm your sensei. Your goal is simple. Survive missions, learn teamwork, and develop your abilities. Fail, and consequences are on you. Pass, and maybe, just maybe, you'll learn something useful. Sasuke's gaze narrowed. Understood. Sakura bowed politely. Yes, sensei. Naruto leaned slightly forward, grinning. Hey. Don't worry, sensei. We'll be fine. I've got a good feeling about this team. Kakashi's visible eye twitched slightly, a subtle acknowledgement. Interesting, the sensei thought. This boy is different. He isn't loud or brash, but he moves with purpose, with instincts I can't quite measure. Naruto's grin didn't fade, but his focus sharpened. He observed his teammates carefully. Sasuke's posture, Sakura's wary glance, and Kakashi's calm, unreadable expression. Everything about them told him exactly what he needed to know. Their strengths, their weaknesses, and the dynamics that would shape the team's future. Before we begin, Kakashi said, pulling two small bells from his jacket, I want to see how well you work together. This will be your first real test as a team. Naruto's pulse quickened. A test. Finally, something that would show what Team 7 was capable of. He could feel Hagoromo's subtle guidance in his chest, an instinctive push to analyze, anticipate, and act without hesitation. Kakashi held the bells up between them. These are the bells. Each of you must take one and return it to me. Simple, right? You have 30 minutes. Fail, and you fail as a team. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. That's it. This was for this video. We'll meet you in the next video. If you like the video, then please like the video, share the video and subscribe to the channel. You are watching Sage What Ifs. Stay tuned.